Today, we're going to talk about a business structure that's really changed the game in India, especially for entrepreneurs. It's called the Limited Liability Partnership, or LLP for short. So let's get into why this has become such a smart choice for so many people. So if you're thinking about starting a business, one of the first big questions you face is, how do I actually set this thing up? For a long, long time, your options were pretty narrow. And honestly, each one came with a major catch. You kind of had two main paths. On one side, you've got the classic partnership. Super simple, right? Flexible, easy to get going. But, and this is a really big but, you, the partner, have unlimited personal liability. That means if the business gets into trouble, your personal assets, your house, your savings, they're fair game. Then, on the other side, you could form a company. That gives you protection for sure, but then you're buried under a mountain of compliance, paperwork, and higher costs. It was a tough spot to be in. So it just makes you wonder, right? Why do you have to pick one or the other? What if you could take the easy, flexible parts of a partnership and mix it with the solid protection you get from a company? And that's exactly where the limited liability partnership comes in. It is the modern solution designed to strike that perfect balance for today's entrepreneurs. So what is an LLP really? Well, at its heart, it's an alternative way to structure your business that literally gives you the best of both worlds. You get the financial shield, the limited liability of a company, but you get to keep the operational flexibility of a partnership. And here's where it gets really powerful. An LLP is considered a separate legal entity. Now, what does that mean? Think of the business as its own person. It can sign contracts, it can own property, and it can even sue or be sued, all under its own name. And get this, it keeps on existing, even if partners leave or new ones join. The business itself is stable and independent. Now this right here, this is the absolute core of the LLP. This quote nails it. Your personal risk is capped. It's limited only to the amount of money you agreed to put into the business. That's it. This is that financial firewall that every entrepreneur dreams of. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. With a traditional partnership, there's basically no wall between your business and your personal life. They're one and the same in the eyes of the law. But with an LLP, there is a solid, clear line drawn in the sand. Your personal assets are shielded, they're safe. Oh, and there's another amazing layer of protection here. In an LLP, you are not on the hook for another partner's bad decisions or misconduct. So if someone else goes rogue, you're shielded from the fallout. You're only responsible for your own actions, which is exactly how it should be. You know, this whole structure wasn't just invented yesterday. It went through a whole legislative process in India, introduced back in 2006, passed into an act in 2008, and then officially rolled out in 2009. And what's really smart is that it's based on successful models from places like the UK and Singapore. So it's a proven concept adapted specifically for India. Okay, so let's really put these two side by side, a direct head-to-head comparison to make the differences pop. This table just spells it all out. Legal status: a partnership is just you and your partners. An LLP is its own entity. Liability: unlimited versus limited. That's the big one. And look at the number of members. A partnership hits a wall at 50 people. An LLP, there's no upper limit at all. You can keep growing. So when you add all this up, it's pretty clear why the LLP has become the weapon of choice for so many entrepreneurs. Let's dig into that edge a little bit more. So besides that crucial liability shield, there are some really practical benefits. It actually costs less to set one up, and you have way fewer compliance headaches to deal with. And a huge one is that an LLP is governed by a flexible agreement that you and your partners decide on, not a rigid set of rules like a company has. That also means no complicated regulations about rotating partners. Even better, the LLP Act makes it possible for existing firms and even private companies to convert into an LLP, which is a fantastic option. You know, this quote really says it all, doesn't it? The reason it's so popular, the reason it's become the most preferred form, is because it so elegantly combines the best of both worlds into one streamlined, powerful package.
You know, for anyone starting a business, this is probably one of the first and biggest decisions you have to make. And it's a huge deal. It's going to affect everything from how protected your personal finances are to just how you run things day to day. You're basically choosing between risk and rules.
So on one side, you've got your traditional partnership. Super easy to get going, right? But, and this is a big but, it comes with unlimited liability. That means if the business owes money, they can come after your personal car, your house, everything. Then on the other side, you've got a company. It protects your personal stuff. which is great, but you're looking at a mountain of paperwork and some pretty strict, complex rules.
But what if you didn't have to make that tough choice between being simple and being safe? What if there was something that gave you the best parts of both? Well, that's exactly the gap the LLP was designed to fill. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. An LLP is basically this alternative business model that's a really clever mix. It takes that awesome limited liability protection you get from a company and combines it with the easygoing, flexible way you can run a partnership. It's really meant to be that perfect middle ground. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because an LLP is its own legal person, so to speak, it can own its own property, sign its own contracts. This creates a legal wall between the business and you personally. Your liability is limited to whatever you agreed to put into the business. Plus, it has what's called perpetual succession, a fancy way of saying the business can keep going even if partners come and go. It's built for the long haul.
So, you're thinking, okay, this LLP thing sounds pretty good, but who can you actually team up with? Who's allowed to be a partner? Let's take a look at the rules.
And you'll see the law is actually pretty open here. Of course, any individual can be a partner, but you can also partner with what's called a body corporate. Now that's just a legal term for other companies, even other LLPs. And it's not just limited to India. You can partner with companies and LLPs from outside the country too. That opens up a whole world of possibilities.
But there are some definite red lines. You can't bring someone on board as a partner if a court has found them to be of unsound mind or if they're what's known as an undischarged insolvent. Basically, they haven't settled their bankruptcy. Same goes if they have an insolvency application that's still pending. This is all about making sure the partnership is on solid ground, legally and financially.
All right, let's talk about a really important rule here. As you might guess from the name partnership, an LLP isn't a one-person show. There's a minimum number you need to keep things running legally.
And yep, the magic number you have to remember is 2. Every single LLP needs to have at least 2 partners. That's the absolute foundation of this whole structure. But hey, things happen in business, right? Partners might decide to leave for all sorts of reasons. So what happens if your partner walks away and suddenly you're the only one left holding the reins? Okay, so here's the deal, and you really need to pay attention to this. The law gives you a 6-month window. If you keep running the business all by yourself for more than 6 months, knowing you're the only partner, everything changes. That legal wall, that limited liability that protects you, it disappears. You become personally responsible for any new debts the business takes on after that 6-month mark. Now, these laws aren't just stuck in the past. In fact, in 2021, there was a major amendment to the LLP Act, a big legal makeover designed to bring it up to speed and make things even easier for businesses. Let's see what they changed.
A huge part of this amendment was all about making it easier to do business in India. So the government decriminalized a bunch of minor procedural slip-ups. The idea was, hey, an honest mistake with paperwork shouldn't land you in criminal trouble. In this table, it shows you exactly how that thinking changed things. Forgetting to file paperwork about a new partner or a new office address or being late with your annual return, things that used to carry fines and could even get you into criminal-level trouble, have now been changed to simple monetary penalties. And check this out. If you don't follow an order to change your LLP's name, instead of just fines, the government can now step in and just assign you a new name.
But hold on, don't think for a second this means the government went soft everywhere. Nope. While they eased up on small compliance mistakes, they cracked down, and I mean hard, on anybody trying to commit actual fraud.
And this number says it all. The maximum prison time for fraudulent activities, like deliberately trying to cheat your creditors, it more than doubled, jumping from 2 years all the way up to 5. That's on top of a hefty fine, too. The message couldn't be clearer. We'll be flexible if you're honest, but if you commit fraud, there will be serious consequences.
And that wasn't all the 2021 amendment did. They're also setting up special courts to make sure trials for any offenses happen way faster. They gave more power to regional directors to settle smaller offenses. And they gave the central government the authority to set accounting and auditing standards for LLPs, which just brings more clarity and professionalism to the whole system. So, we've gone through all the details, the rules, the changes, but what does it all mean? What's the big takeaway? Why should you, as an entrepreneur in India, really care about all this? It all boils down to that perfect balance. The LLP gives you that corporate armor to shield your personal assets, which is a huge relief for any founder. But it does it without making you wear the heavy, clunky suit of complex rules that a full company has. It's designed to let you stay nimble and agile.
And look, it's not just us saying it. As the source material puts it so well, there's a very good reason the LLP is the most preferred choice for so many entrepreneurs. It truly does take the best of both worlds, the partnership and the company, and rolls them into one smart package.
The whole point of an LLP is to protect partners from each other's mistakes. But someone still has to be legally accountable. And that, my friends, is the designated partner. It's a title that comes with a lot of power and, believe me, even greater responsibility. So let's dive in. So here's how we're going to break it down. First up, we'll figure out what a designated partner actually is. Then we'll look at how you get the title in the first place. After that, we get to the really juicy stuff, the duties and the dangers. And finally, we'll cover what happens when the rules get broken. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, Section 1, the LLP's point person. In a business that's all about sharing responsibility, you've got to ask, who's the one person in charge of making sure the company actually follows the law? I mean, think about it for a second. An LLP is great because it shields partners from being personally liable for the group's actions. But the company itself still has to obey the law, right? So when there's an issue with legal filings or some compliance problem, who's the single person that has to step up and answer for everyone? Well, the answer is the designated partner, or DP for short. Now, this isn't just a fancy title for a senior partner. No way. The law defines the DP as the individual who is ultimately on the hook for the LLP's compliance. This means they're responsible for all the legal stuff, but more importantly, they are personally liable for any penalties if the LLP breaks the rules. And this isn't just a suggestion, it's the law. Every single LLP is required by law to have at least 2 designated partners at all times. So who can these people be? Well, as you're about to see, the rules are pretty specific. First off, a designated partner has to be an actual person, not a corporation. That's key. And at least one of them has to be a resident of India. And what does resident mean here? It means they've physically been in the country for at least 182 days in the past year. Even if all the partners are big corporations, they still have to nominate real, living, breathing people to take on this massive responsibility. Okay, let's move on to Section 2, getting the title. We know who can be a DP, but how does somebody actually get this job? It can happen in a few different ways. The most common way is just being named right there in the LLP's founding documents. Simple enough. Or the documents can just say that all partners are automatically designated partners. And of course, the LLP agreement itself can spell out the whole process for appointing or removing DPs down the line. And, with any official role like this, there's always paperwork. It kicks off with the person giving their formal consent to take on the role. Then the LLP has to file their personal details with the government. All these forms just make sure there's absolutely no confusion about who is legally responsible for what. But hold on, not just anyone can take on this job. The law is very clear about who's disqualified. For instance, if you've been declared insolvent or couldn't pay your creditors in the last 5 years, you're out. Same goes for anyone convicted of a serious crime, especially anything involving fraud under the LLP Act itself. They're looking for a clean record here. Which brings us to Section 3, duties and dangers. So we know who can be a DP and how they get there, but now for the big question. What do they actually have to do? What's the risk? To put it as simply as I can, the designated partner is the compliance backbone of the entire LLP. They are the person who makes sure every legal I is dotted and every T is crossed, period. And this is where things get really serious. The law breaks it down into 2 main parts. First, you have the responsibility to act. That means filing all the documents, returns, and statements correctly and on time. But the second part? That's the real kicker, the liability. A designated partner is personally on the hook for all penalties the LLP gets for breaking the rules. That is a huge financial risk to take on for the whole team. And that leads us perfectly into our final section, rules and repercussions. So what happens if a DP leaves or if people just don't follow the rules? While the law doesn't mess around, the second a DP position opens up, for any reason at all, a 30-day countdown starts ticking. The LLP has exactly 1 month to find and appoint a replacement. No excuses, no grace period. So what happens if they miss that 30-day deadline? The law has a default setting, and it's a big one. If that spot isn't filled, or if the number of DPs drops to just 1, then boom. Every single partner in the LLP is automatically considered a designated partner. Suddenly, everyone is sharing that huge responsibility and all that liability. And yeah, the financial penalties are no joke. As you can see here, not having at least 2 designated partners can cost you anywhere from 10,000 rupees all the way up to 5 lakh rupees. Other mistakes, like messing up filings or not filling a vacancy, can still lead to fines up to 1 lakh. And get this, those fines can be charged to both the LLP and every single partner. So, if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. The role of a designated partner is not just for show. It's not a ceremonial title you put on a business card. It is a fundamental, legally required position that comes with some very real and very serious legal and financial weight.